Yes, from all regions in Kenya. Country Ride gives you the best musical experience to you and your family.
She's the lead.
Bring out the best of country magical moments by celebrating our fans' music, powered by DJ Stiga and host CK the Cowgirl.
Watch the Country Ride every Sunday, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Only on
by
TV.
Infotrack poll. And you know, Infotrack is not the kind of poll agency that you wish away in the country. They have been here long enough, and in all the previous elections that they have handled in terms of polls, I mean, somehow what it is that they present to the people, you know, has dictated the shape of politics. What do you make of this?
I think in Kenya we have not matured enough inbuilt interest in the electoral process by non-partisan persons that would fund such opinion polls so that they reflect the will and the aspirations of people at that particular time.
Okay.
So I take them with a pinch of salt, obviously, because it also happens where I come from. I've seen many opinion polls. We have Infotrack, at least it is in a level that is a bit legitimate and acceptable. We have others like Kodi Mizani. I've seen them talking about my sitting governor in Nyandarua winning of 50%. And actually, to get to double digit in Nyandarua would be a very big problem. And therefore it tells you that who pays the piper calls the tune. Therefore, for Infotrack, you can give them the benefit of doubt. And I think they have also been consistent. They have been there when sometimes the deputy president is reading. Then the Azimio presidential candidate, BAMBA, is now coming up. And when you also see the way they are categorizing the opinion poll across the counties and across the regions, the former provinces, you find that actually that is a semblance of what is actually on the ground. But what I would want to say is that Kenyan polls, they have never, from the time I have known, and they have been a voter since 1992, normally they have not reflected the actual outcome. There has been a lot of claims of rigging and whatever, but they have really never reflected the actual outcome after the votes are counted and pronounced. And therefore, it shapes public opinion, and people would want to be associated with the winning side. And therefore, it is very, very important and fundamental as we go to elections. But then for Kenyans, is let them listen to us, let them listen to the presidential candidates, and they make the right choices.
For presidential candidates, we have Honorable Leslie Simeo. Overlook the opinion polls that have been presented to us so far. Your own opinion poll. Your own view of what the political, matrix looks like. Do you suppose that your side then is making the gains that you promised? You said that the Kenya Kwanza side was out there campaigning for close to 9 years or so to speak. And so today, as you join the campaign trail, as you present to us your manifesto, do you think you are going to undo the gains that Kenya Kwanza has managed?
Yeah. We have to undo those gains, especially for us in Bungoma.
So far?
Especially for us in Bungoma. It's just about the other weekend is when we hit the ground. And we believe that as we work more, we'll be able to claw back some of the gains they've made, because they are used to giving what I call falsehoods. And speaking from both corners of the mouth. You see, like when they talk about the debt in Kenya, they are trying to pretend like they were not part of it. Yet they were part of it on this debt. I think what we need to ask them now is of that debt, how much was stolen and who stole it? Those are the questions and answers that we want.
Yeah. Of
that debt, how much was stolen and who stole it? We need to know that, and then we need to start telling people the truth about Kenya Kwanza, because I'm afraid to say, while both divides have got people perhaps with unsavory pasts, but the Kenya Kwanza side has got more of those. than the Azimio side. And you know, they keep on telling the young people, forget history. Let's talk about the future. You know why? Because if you delve into the history, theirs is terrible. So they are trying to encourage the young people not to go into history. As I said before, they appeared. The only person I pity there is Musalia, because I don't think he fits into that that group.
Yeah.
I mean, when you study their pasts.
Right.
So I think he's perhaps in the wrong way, misplaced, but the rest are birds of a feather.
And they're flocking together. Interesting. And we'll get to that Musalia factor and see.
And if we go into their histories, then Kenyans have a reason to be very worried.
Very worried. So when you speak of Musalia, do you suppose they're going to deliver the 70?
No. We'll make sure Musalia doesn't deliver that. We'll make sure. When
you say we, you mean
the Azimio team?
DAP?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, we'll make sure they don't deliver that.
All right.
You see, when you look at Bungoma, you must realize that there's a whole constituency of Bungoma, which is Kenya Kwanza.
Yeah.
That's the Mount Elgon constituency, which is the Sabaot, who are Kalenjin by ethnic whatever. So that definitely that already counts 70-something thousand votes. So it's so you have to realize that will always be like that.
Okay.
And let's work at it.
All
because
right.
we must admit that they made some inroads in Bungoma, and they are trying to build on it. So we'll have to work very hard, extra hard.
Okay.
But as I told you, we hit the ground about two weekends ago. And we are now moving on the ground, and we are sure that we'll be able to make some gains and claw back what they've taken. Once we encourage our people to actually look at the history, because they have been encouraged not to look at the history, which is unfortunate, because usually history also determines what the person is likely to do, later on. Because when you talk of history and they don't want, because Bungoma, by the way, holds very many people who are displaced here from 1992, and they are languishing in market centers and this what do we call them? We call them in our language erandi. They are languishing there. Some people had maybe acres of land; they were thrown out. Now they live on half an acre. So people are impoverished, and they are there with us in Bungoma. So they are encouraging the young people not to look into that history. But history can repeat itself if you refuse to look at it.
Wow. Okay.
So we are hitting the ground, and we are sure we'll be able to claw back a substantial part of that.
Okay. UGM is in support of Azimio One Kenya, or is under, or is in?
Yes. One of the things that I wanted to tell you, Linda, just picking up from what Honorable Salisimi is saying, is that this particular election is going to be won on the basis of voter turnout. It's too close to call as an election, so the persons or the political coalition that is going to be able to turn out the vote is going to win the election. So the opinion polls is a good thing. Where they are is a good indication, but now the various constituencies have to work in terms of helping build up that particular mass for purposes of turning out the vote. And you know, you've already seen margins as 1 million or less is what's going to determine this particular election. So I think both coalitions really need to work hard at doing that. But I'm just picking up from one Honorable Salisimi saying, I'm wondering why he's exonerating Musalia in the Kenya Kwanza alliance. Yet, I mean, you know the Goldenberg scandal, and he was a Minister for Finance.
Okay.
So I really think that Kenya needs to have, you know, if the IEBC was working, and we've spoken about the IEBC quite a bit, there's some people who should actually not be on the ballot, just on the basis of integrity, the basis of Article 79 of the Constitution. You know, we must be able to have a place where you say some of these people cannot stand to be elected. And if we get to that as a country, the Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission will be doing Kenyans a favor in a manner that, you know, the people who then are in the ballot are people who are credible, people they can believe. History, like it says, lawyers will tell you it's about character evidence. The fact that someone has behaved in a particular way, if they behave like that in 1992, they behave like that in 1997, they will behave like that in 2027. So you must, once you study the character of an individual, you can be so sure that there's nothing that is going to be new in terms of what they deliver. So I really think that Kenyans really need to go to the ballot to elect leaders of integrity, leaders who can deliver on the promise, and leaders who believe in the aspirations of the Constitution of Kenya.
If we were to take this, before we come to you, Wakili, in defense of your is it your coalition or what? Because it's a little bit confusing on this other side of Kenya Kwanza. But looking at these numbers, and speaking of a possible Raila win or Ruto win, they say the only way that Right Honorable Raila Odinga would be lucky enough to win this is that if he maintains the kind of popularity, or he would hold his strongholds together. Do you suppose it dictates that really he still holds the strongholds that he once had, and therefore probably a top-up from the mountain or a different region would be a plus?
I think if you look at the history of Kenya, is that Raila has really gotten support from the Mount Kenya region. And each time I think Mount Kenya has gone to the votes, I think Raila has been getting 4% or these small percentiles. Any extra percentages that he gets will make Raila president out of central Kenya. So you know the way the country he's been balkanized is that the country votes on various polities. And those polities, if you look at Raila's history from 97, 2002, 2007, he has been getting voting blocks from the very same people and for various reasons. And so that, I mean, his voting block in Nyanza, for example, is unquestionable. His voting block in the coast is unquestionable. So there is not much that he has lost. And you know, Raila ran against President Kibaki, Raila ran against Moi, and he's been getting the same voting block and of course increasing it. And it would have been dicey if Kalonzo had left Azimio. But Kalonzo back in Azimio, I really think that with any percentage that Raila gets from Mount Kenya region, he should be able to become president.
Okay. Wakili.
So when we talk about looking at history for this country, I think most of the leaders in the national platform would not even be contesting now. Almost all of them. And actually it is becoming worse every day.
It is unfair that they are only targeting Sonko.
Yes. So every day, and actually, none other than the president himself has admitted that today we are going to lose 2 billion shillings. And tomorrow we are also going to lose another 2 billion shillings. And we are doing nothing about it. And as I've previously stated, is that there has not been any political goodwill to fight corruption in this country. We just pinpoint people and point fingers at persons who are not politically correct at that particular time. But corruption in this country has been institutionalized, and I doubt that through that affecting and audit of people's lifestyles and what they own and hold, that many of us would be on the ballot. And the simple thing about this is that as we look for this history that we are talking, we know, unfortunately, from what Dr. Eseri is saying, is that we only look at these issues and we want to look at that history from political podiums, not through serious investigation and sanctions being applied to those who are alleged to have compromised the interest of this country. And the only way to do about it, and I think that is what Kenya Kwanza is addressing, a stop to this corruption and a stop to killing these dreams and aspiration of our people. By funding the DCI, professionalizing the DCI, and keeping off politics from the DCI, and the same to apply to the EACC and also to the DPP. That is the only way we are going to ensure that this security for our prosperity of our people is secured. This is the same government which unfortunately I have been part of, that has even denied the judiciary the funds to be able to prosecute effectively corruption-related cases. But then they are saying the judiciary is the weak link. How can it be the weak link when you are not funding it to be able to do its job? So I think for us is that Kenya Kwanza, we believe this is an election for us to lose, and that we have really eaten into Baba's traditional strongholds, Western, Jubilee, the foothold has been very shaky, but now we are family, and Dr. is admitting that we are there. They have to fight very hard, and there before they were just getting it. It was a walk in the park, but of now we are there. We are the people to watch in the coast. Baba was running. He was running like across us, across the whole coast province. But now we are there. We are inside there. Actually, we expect to beat Baba in the coast region.
Okay.
At least he has been able to grow back something in the eastern with the coming back of Karonzo. But I think that the people of Roa Eastern, they even now they don't understand Karonzo now. And they might not be able to galvanize, a lot of votes for BAMBA. So at the end of the day, let us look at these issues through the prisms of honesty and the fidelity to facts and reality in this country, and you can tell that Kenya Kwanza actually is the coalition to beat.
Okay, well, interesting. You want to counter that?
The issue of the judiciary
Yeah.
is the judiciary that brought the war to Parliament. How do you bring war to a budget-making organ and expect them to fund you?
Okay.
You see, the judiciary has always, whenever Parliament has been sued before the courts, the Parliament has always come off badly, even on things that are very simple. You see, like when this Senate thing going to court saying that there's some bills were passed without their concurrence, yet it's very clear it's matters concerning counties.
Yeah.
Something is not strictly concerning counties, the judiciary comes in and says the laws should have gone through Senate.
Yeah.
So actually the judiciary brought this problem on themselves because they have really antagonized the Parliament.
It was not
like the judges,
as a result of which
the judges themselves, they get mortgages, okay, to purchase their residences, and they draw house allowance.
Yeah.
Yet they deny members of Parliament to draw house allowance.
Okay.
They say, so how do they expect any favors from the
house?
Parliament? Yes. Then they go ahead and say dissolve Parliament, and they still expect favors from Parliament.
We shall revisit and battles against.
I think I disagree with my colleague, Honorable Sadis.
That should be misplaced because now that
number one is that
the dictatorship is wrong. Okay. Not even dictatorship by the judiciary.
And therefore you should be punished at the expense of the people who are yearning for justice.
Look at the dictatorship of the judiciary, leave alone now even Parliament alone. Some of the things the judiciary has been doing, you know, they make a judgment and just say, oh my God, I'm not a lawyer, but hey, how is this? You know? So there is an element of judiciary dictatorship.
Dictatorship the person who suffers then is the common mwananchi who's looking up to
I think Honorable Sadisimiyu, the judiciary needs to be made independent. Yeah. Independent means both legislative and also budgetary. We really need to operationalize the judicial fund. That's important for the judiciary. I mean, whatever they do with it is another story. You know, Parliament also has checks on the judiciary. You know, so that the check on the judiciary is not just about denying or stifling the past. There are other ways, credible ways that, you know, the law puts in place for checking the judiciary. I mean, granted, the judiciary sometimes has been rogue. We're not discounting that. But first things first, let's give them the fund. You know, in the 11th Parliament, we were able to increase incrementally the budget of the judiciary. I mean, when we got to Parliament, in the 11th Parliament.
And you should have seen what they did.
It was, I agree, I'll get there.
Before Public Accounts Committee.
I'll get there.
What the judiciary did with that money.
I was shocking. I will get there. You know, we moved the judiciary budget from 3 billion that it was in the 10th Parliament to about 16 billion shillings when we were leaving the House of Parliament in 2017, which was a good thing. And you know, what did they do with that in the first place? They enabled, I mean, the Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, had a plan. He said he was going to make justice accessible. The high courts were then decentralized. You know, there's a high court currently in Homa Bay, there's a high court in Bungoma, there's a high court all over the place. So what they did with the Access to Justice program was that, you know, they decentralized the judiciary in a manner that it was good. You know, people didn't have to leave all the way from Marsabit to come to a court in Embu, or people did not have to go from I mean, the high court then was only sitting in Kisumu, and judges, I mean, people had to queue. So that was a good thing. But then again, with the increase in the budget, they also became the appetite for theft and for greed also then you know, came in place, which I think we must also point out. I mean, at some point when you gave them money, they wanted to buy a judicial helicopter. They wanted to fly the Chief Justice. So the appetite, having seen that there was money coming in, there was appetite, which again, as a Committee of Justice, then we were able to control. But that is one. But then number two, I think it was within the rights of the judiciary to say that this Parliament should be dissolved and it should go home. I mean, even if I was in Parliament, I would still take it without really feeling like the judiciary was out of place. The 2/3 gender rule, as is posed by the Constitution, must be put in place. Parliament, whether it's the 13th Parliament, must have a framework with regard to how that is realized. And in fact, I'm hoping that some members of civil society, even though I get elected on 9th of August, can still revisit that dissolution of the House of of Parliament, if at all it's not compliant with regard to the two-thirds gender rule. We must, if Kenya bestowed upon it the Constitution 2010, we must live the aspirations of that particular Constitution. It must not be very, very smooth. It cannot just be, we cherry pick what is good for us at the House of Parliament. Yeah. No, if the Parliament doesn't meet the two-thirds gender threshold, it should be dissolved until such a time that we have a framework that helps it work. But let me get back to what Wakili said with regard to corruption, both in the judiciary but also the House of Parliament. I think Kenyans have glorified corruption, and we've made it a museum of its own. That even in my county of Homa Bay, you see theft all over the place. I'm sure the same is in Nyandarua, I'm sure the same is in Bungoma. Yeah. But now Kenyans are saying that it is good, at least it's being stolen here, it's being stolen at home. It cannot be like that. It cannot be that you cannot glorify theft. We must have people working hard, and there must be integrity at the various levels. And I really think that is where the judiciary gets it wrong. When you have members of the judiciary being removed or being removed from office on the basis of petition for theft, who then is going to be our guard? Who is going to then safeguard the whole? So I think as a country, we really need to be moving forward to levels where we are protecting the country. And that brings me to the point that Honorable Selesi made about the debt. You see, the country has been indebted. There is nothing wrong with borrowing, but you cannot be borrowing to steal the same way this country, the government has. So, if you look at the Kenya debt burden, the time Jubilee took over power, the Kenya debt percentage was at 44%. But in a period of 6, 7, 8 years, they've increased it by 20%. There are international guidelines with regard to how much debt is good for a country. There's something called the Maastricht guidelines with regard to debt of countries. It puts the debt burden of a country at 60% of the GDP to the debt of a country. So if that is what is acceptable, as in, you're allowed to borrow, but if you're a country, at least keep your debt budget to the GDP ratio at 60%. Kenya right now is at 68%, going to 69%. The International Monetary Fund puts the debt to GDP ratio at 44%. Kenya, as a developing country, should be having a debt to GDP ratio of 40%. We're at 68%. Yeah. Now that shows you there's a problem. It is not bad to borrow, like President Kenyatta says. Yeah. But if you see how Jubilee has borrowed, the Jubilee administration has borrowed, they borrow it to steal. Where is Aror? Where is Kimore? Where is, if you look at the standard gauge railway that they borrowed 3 times the amount of that was supposed to be. That was supposed to be used. So I think that is not very good for a country like us. And where is the other problem, which I think Kenyans must understand? First, our borrowing is in foreign currency. What does that do for us? It devalues our currency. It means that the prices of imports that we get into the country then becomes very expensive. So that you cannot tell us that, for example, a country like Japan has a debt ratio of 178%, or that the US has a debt ratio of about 200%. What is the difference between that, what is happening in the US, and what's happening in Kenya? The US borrowing or the Japanese borrowing is internal. They are borrowing from themselves internally. So that means it's not in foreign currency, but number two, it's from the domestic borrowing. Ours is foreign exchange. So you borrow from China, and the terms are not very good. You borrow from all over the place. What does that mean? That, some of the Kenya's collateral, like, the Chinese debts are tied to Kenya's assets, Lamu Port, Mombasa Port, which then eventually will be auctioned. If we are borrowing to invest in places that produce, which is what's supposed to be, debt is supposed to be helping plug the budgetary deficits. Kenya has not been borrowing to plug the budget deficits. Kenya is borrowing to steal. So you see this in campaign helicopters, you see this in... So if we take over power as UGM, which is the point I wanted to make, in the next couple of years, 5-10 years, some of these debts must be declared odious. You must tell the people that you borrowed, but you did not use it for the benefit of the people of Kenya. Those are private borrowings, and you must pay for them. So that administrations that will have come, whether it's Kenya Kwanza, whether it's Azimio, Jubilee, some of these people must be held to account. The money they borrowed, the money that they not used to invest in the Kenyan people, must then be paid by them, by their families, by their assets, and those assets must be attached. That is the only way to bring discipline in the country and stop the theft.
All right, yes.
I wanted to mention something about the courts and parliament, because it is very important, and that is where we also do business, and therefore it is important to protect those institutions. From what the Daktari is saying is that these directions on how parliament should be remunerated, those are directions issued through circulars by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And they were invoking their powers under Article 229 of the Constitution. And therefore, the court was only called upon to interpret what the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, what they were doing, whether it was right or wrong. And actually they did that interpretation. Judiciary was not in court. There was nobody who has questioned the remuneration and the privileges of the judiciary. And that is why in court, when the court is determining issues, it says Dr. Eseris Miu and others not before court. We deal with Eseris Miu who is in court. In this case, it is Parliament which was in court, and therefore a determination was made on it. And therefore, the other issue is that Parliament also has not been handling its cases properly. I have been with them. I have sued them severally for the legislations they have passed on the core of the MCAs, on requirement that a speaker should step aside when a motion is brought against him, on the issue of the degree, on all those issues. And Simiyu said, Daktari, Mheshimiwa, we have won all of them against you. So it is either you are doing very bad laws, or you are not very serious in defending your issues in court. Because you have not won against the County Assemblies Forum, which I read. Therefore, I believe that Parliament, by slashing the budget for the judiciary, it is just in pursuit of we are going to revisit. That is all
all said and done. It's a hunting on.
I agree with him to an extent.
Yes.
But just look at this. When Chief Justice Maraga ruled that Parliament should be dissolved, it was supposed to be an advisory, isn't it? Now just look at this. The Constitution is the one that says no more than 2/3.
Yes.
When you come to the electoral law, it's first past the post.
Yes.
It cannot possibly implement the Constitution.
Yes.
So I would have thought that the Chief Justice would have advised Parliament to amend the Elections Act to ensure that the 2/3 gender rule is met, and that can only be done by proportional representation.
Okay.
So you cannot implement the Constitution with the current elections law.
Okay.
You can't. So this is the Chief Justice. This is the Chief Justice of the country.
In this case, hunting on.
He can't see this. He's trying to force something which can't happen. With the current electoral law first past the post, you can never.
Dr. Selig gets it right, Alela. Dr. Selig gets it right by saying that the current election law as it is cannot implement the Constitution. That's a good statement, and that is correct. But you must understand that the person who makes law is the House of Parliament. It's not the judiciary. The judiciary has no legislative competence. So you see, what does the Constitution presuppose? The Constitution presupposes that if at all you do not have a legislation that enables the Constitution, then you'll have failed your duty, and then you stand dissolved. So what Parliament should have done in 2017, 2018, 2019 is make a legislation that makes first past the post, not the electoral process. So it's not for Justice Maraga to tell Parliament what to do. You understand the independence of the institutions does not tell you, we're not telling you what to do. We're only saying you've made a mistake. Find a way how to correct it.
Yes.
That's what the spirit is. So it is true that Maraga did what is supposed to have done according to the Constitution. The Constitution only asks him to advise whether to dissolve or not. Why are you dissolving or not? Because Parliament has not made a law that is supposed to have done. So Parliament is being told, you should have made a law. However it looks, we don't know and we don't care.
You'll dissolve all parliaments in future, so long as you have that first past the post as your election.
But again,
so you'll keep on dissolving.
Our leader should be understood. The first past the post, yes, it is a drawback to the implementation of the Constitution. But again, we have to appreciate that any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is narrowed void to the extent of that inconsistency. Therefore, actually, Honorable Esari, as they deal with ensuring that we achieve the 2/3 gender rule, that actually that provision in the Elections Act remains moribund as long as the Constitution dictates otherwise. And it was for Parliament to cultivate a legislation around the provisions of the Constitution to ensure that that 2/3 gender rule is met.
And so it was by design.
It cannot abdicate that role. It is their role to ensure that it happens.
But I think it's good to notice what Honorable Salisemi is saying, that the next parliaments are going to stand dissolved to the extent that we have not attained the 2/3 gender rule. So that's a thing that's important for any legislative house to take into consideration. I really think that the Parliament should prioritize how then do we attain the 2/3 gender rule in a manner that does not, take away the gain that made by the women, but also does not put the constitution and the country in jeopardy. So I really think it's something that we need to prioritize. I'm happy for you to second my motion on that particular discussion.
And you know, the thing is, with proportional representation, you'll be able to weed out these people that Matiang'i was saying over 40% crooked fellows are going to be elected.
Right.
You'll be able to weed them out because for you to present your party list, then you, and by the way, there are very many good people in Kenya who don't want to get involved in elective politics just because of the messy thing that it is. But if you go proportional representation, you'll be able to get good quality people into that house.
I mean, that's a good debate.
So,
I mean, honestly,
there are many things here.
Yeah.
But the Chief Justice stood a chance that time.
Which he did.
Even if he said dissolve Parliament, but he would have advised.
Make adjustments on the elections.
But he didn't. You can't live in a vacuum.
That's scapegoat.
You can't live in a vacuum and say that, okay, once I've advised, that's up to them. No.